Tina, and during today's podcast, I'll be looking into Benjamin Franklin as a product of both Puritan roots and the logical advances of the Enlightenment during the late 1700s and the early 1800s. Benjamin was one of 13 children and was born in Boston on January 17th of 1706 into a very devout and moral Puritan household. His father was a candle maker and skillful mechanic, which he often referred to as a man of sound understanding and of solid judgment. His mother was said to be a discreet and very virtuous woman. Franklin himself grew up to be a man of great importance, known as a founding father, spokesman, and a model for national character. He also had many different occupations during his lifetime, which made him the honorable man that he's remembered as today. Franklin was not only an inventor, but also a printer, essayist, moralist, civic leader, scientist, statesman, diplomat, and even a philosopher. Starting at a young age, Franklin was taken in by his father under apprenticeship to follow in his footsteps and to continue the family business. Franklin, however, proved himself to be more of an intellectual. During his spare time at the shop, he educated himself by reading hundreds of books from New England and others from his home. Over time, Franklin's interests veered towards the values of philosophy of the English Enlightenment, which he found fascinating. Because of this, he somewhat rejected his father's Calvinist theological views and began to disassociate himself from his Puritan background and thus his family. As Conyers Reed states in his article, English Enlightenment Elements in Franklin, Franklin was in his beginnings essentially a frontier type, an adventurer, a rebel against conventional order. In his autobiography, Franklin briefly describes his poor upbringing into a modest family and his thirst for escape. By the blessings of God, he says, he ran away to Philadelphia in 1723. Little did he know, this somewhat rash decision would bring him to a new life filled with both reputation and affluence. It is after running away that Franklin turned to printing and soon owned his own newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette. Franklin's interest in writing brought forth many great finds, among them his autobiography, his 13 Values for Steps to Self-Betterment, and Poor Richard's Almanac, which he published under the pseudonym Poor Richard, alluding to his past. Although Franklin may have tried to bury his Puritan roots, he far from succeeded. He still acted out some of its fundamental ideals, among these the modesty of life, favoring reason and logic over rhetoric and metaphor, and finding utility in everything and in every one. Franklin believed in self-betterment, that is, being able to rise up individually with the help of only yourself. This is why he printed his 13 values. These values of temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility were all in support of self-actualization. Together, these values would help individuals rise to the top. Franklin truly believed, as he states in his autobiography, that this was his conception of the project of arriving at moral perfection. He did not, however, fully live by each of these virtues. He believed that the mere attempt to complete them made him a better man and aided in his life successes. These values and their meaning meant much to Benjamin, who devoted a large section of his autobiography to their unveiling and explanation. He further stated, "I hope, therefore, that some of my descendants may follow the example and reap the benefit." These values are yet another affirmation of Franklin's Puritan influence. Whereas Puritanism aimed for the well-being of all converts, it also introduced the idea of individual predestination. This means that each individual was in a certain position because God willed so. With this in mind, Franklin's values can be arguably viewed as an attempt to somewhat upgrade those placed lower in Puritan society, giving them a chance to succeed in life as well. Franklin did not, at any rate, believe that success and happiness was passed down from father to son or from generation to generation. He wanted each individual to take in his readings and to do with them as they saw fit. He also wanted each person to pursue their own self-actualization and to reach their own goals in life. While instances like these obviously link Franklin to Puritanism and its values, others strongly reinforce him as a product of the Enlightenment and it sparked interest in scientific approaches. Among these would obviously be Franklin's interest in electricity. He pursued numerous experiments around this subject, which were mainly tested and tried in France. In 1752, he was able to prove that lightning was a form of electricity. This was of course demonstrated through the kite and key experiment. This precise experiment could be the prime example in shedding light on both Franklin's Puritan side and his influence gathered from the Enlightenment period. The Puritan aspect could be traced back to some form of witchery or witchcraft. In a way, flying a kite with a metallic key during a lightning storm can be seen as somewhat unconventional or odd, even. Witchery does not simply involve cult practices. It basically refers to any sort of weird or strange behavior. This experiment at the time would then, of course, more than definitely fit under the category. With that in mind, it also ties in the scientific aspect of interest and logic, which were typical values of the Enlightenment era. Another aspect of Franklin that could be tied in with both areas would be his writing. While some may find it short and dry, to the contrary of writers of the time, Franklin has a directness to him, which embodies both the utilitarian aspect of Puritanism and the logical sense in what he writes from the Enlightenment. All this to say, so what? Why does it matter that Franklin embodied his rejected Puritan background and embraced his Enlightenment ideals? Well, we can tell from this that nobody can neglect their roots, that no matter how hard Franklin tried to turn himself into a new man, a man of self-conviction and logic, he still relied on his roots of utility, theology, and practice. All of this is understandable through his autobiography, his writing style in general, the experiments he conducted, his individuality from others during the time, and his 13 values. So why does it matter, you say? Because without these two fundamental building blocks to his personality, who would Benjamin Franklin be today? Would he stick out to us as more than a mere skeptic of his time? The answer is probably no. Franklin wanted to be popular, but not in our modern conception of the famous for a year pop star. He wanted to give meaning to the century he lived in. And as Dr. Richard Beeman states, he wanted to make history, to leave his mark on the world through his deeds and ideals, which was successful largely in part due to his duality. Thank you for your time, and I hope you view that Franklin's person is more than one-sided, but rather a multifaceted being.